If you've ever asked yourself, how much is my plumbing business worth? If you're thinking about selling your plumbing business within the next year, or maybe you just want to get a little bit of a valuation of your plumbing business right now because you want to increase the valuation over the next few years, then this video is definitely for you. Today, we're going to talk about how to value a plumbing business, the math behind it, the numbers behind it, what drives the valuation up or down, and also look at some specifics that you need to watch out for if you want to know what your plumbing business is worth. My name is Chris from CT Acquisitions. We help connect buyers and sellers of businesses, whether it's a plumbing business or an HVAC business, we've done it all. And we also have an internal division that helps increase the value of the business over time. So whether you are a couple months away from selling or a couple years away from selling, I'm going to put our details below if you want to reach out. It's absolutely free. We can give you our best advice. I can definitely help you out, whether it's getting the max for a sale right now or increasing that valuation over the next few years. But let's jump back into how to value your plumbing business. What's your plumbing business worth in 2026? So first of all, I need to put a big fat disclaimer on this video, as on any other video. A valuation of a business is always subjective. There is no fixed market price like you have, for example, with a stock or something like that. It's always just what a buyer and a seller agrees to. Now, there are some general metrics and some techniques that people use and that your buyer will use to value your business. There is always a range. There is never a one fixed price. It's going to be a range of what you fall into. Now, we're going to talk about what moves that range up or down, but you will never get like a 100% price sticker. And also everything that I say in this video, there's always a range to this, how important it is and what moves the valuation. Most of the businesses are, and including your plumbing business, are going to be valued on cash flow, right? So at the smaller level, we're talking about SDE, so seller discretionary earnings. That's essentially the profit of the business plus what you kind of like take out as a salary, whether you pay yourself all the profit or whether you leave some profit in the business, take out a salary. And then there's some things that we call adjusted SDE or adjusted EBITDA for bigger businesses. EBITDA, obviously, earnings before interest and taxes and deductions and amortizations. It's essentially also a proxy for profitability of the business. So a buyer will always measure the cash flow, right? What you need to think about is if you have some team members that are family, right? Like that oftentimes will be deducted. If you take yourself an above market salary, that can influence that. If you run your personal expenses, your car, your travel, everything that gets added back into the profitability of the business, because if a buyer buys a business, they're not going to take the same company vacations as you take. They're not going to drive the same car as you do, right? So like that will be adjusted to market standard, right? The same way it goes into the other direction. If you pay yourself absolutely no salary, there will be a market salary of a manager deducted from your profit, because obviously if you want the business to run without you, there needs to be a manager in place and that will get deducted from the profit, right? So like these are kind of like just little numbers that move that number up and down. And the second one that moves that number up and down a lot is size, right? Between a business that does 300,000 in profit a year and a business that does 3 million, there is a different what we call multiple to that business. Just a ballpark range, right? Like businesses below 1 million are going to trade at 3 to 4x, probably the profit 3 to 5x most of the time. And it gets substantially higher the more profitability a business has. The big case that everybody always quotes, there was an HVAC and plumbing and electrical company that got acquired for 18 times EBITDA, right? So like you can probably go as high as 18 times. Most of the time for small businesses like yours, you're going to talk anywhere from 3 to 7 times multiple of the EBITDA or SDE in that case. And on the very low end, maybe like 2.5 or something like that. Now, some strategic acquirers are going to value your business on recurring revenue. So not just revenue in total, but revenue that is either contracted or very much repeat business over the years. Don't take that as the main valuation. Normally 9 times out of 10, it's going to be valued on cash flow, but there are some exceptions to that when there is a strategic buyer that is interested in the purchase of the business themselves. Then even if you might not be that profitable, you will still get a good price if your recurring revenue is very high. Let's say you're an owner operator below 1 million, you're probably going to get like 2.5 to 4.5 in terms of multiple. Then if you're somewhere in between that 1 to 5 million in EBITDA, this is where probably you're going to see, something between 3 to 7. And once you get above that, which is kind of like a multi-state, very much multi-location operations, it's probably going to be more in the range of 5 to 9 or something like that, right? But I mean, it really depends on the use case, and you see these ranges are high because next we're going to talk about what moves that multiple up or down, and then you need to take a look at your business and decide whether that fits and that should drive the multiple up, or you still have a weakness here that will drive the multiple down. So here are a couple things. They're not necessarily in order, but they are in order. That makes or breaks what your plumbing business is worth and how a plumbing valuation functions for your business, right? So like first is going to be owner dependence. How dependent is the business on yourself? That comes down to licensing, right? So like, do you have a licensing bench of licensed plumbers that can replace your license? That's what it starts with, right? Because let's say you are the only person holding that license and somebody in a suit wants to buy your business, but they don't have a license. They oftentimes can't, right? So that's going to be one question. Then, are you the relationships? Are you doing the client? Are you the manager? How much second layer management we call it, whether it's sales, whether it's customer relationships, whether it's managing the team, the actual projects, whether it's doing like the billing, how much are you involved in the business? And also how much does the business rely on you, right? So a good test is here. If you went away for 30 to 90 days, what would happen in the business? And if not much, then not much would change, then that's a very good sign. Obviously, if the business would stop functioning, that means your business is very much owner dependent, and any buyer who buys your business is going to price that in. And the second part is the revenue mix, right? Like buyers love recurring revenue, whether it's contracted or just repeat business, repairs versus installs, right? Like most buyers, they don't want new constructions because it's very cyclical. They don't want that much installs. They want repair revenue. Ideally, if you have memberships, right, like where you have people on a recurring plan, that's the gold standard of revenue. And when you have like a lot of memberships and recurring revenue, that's where sometimes you will get valued on your recurring revenue. On the flip side, if you're only doing new constructions, very cyclical, any buyer will either walk away from the business completely. So we do see a lot of these businesses, plumbing businesses, HVAC businesses that are relying on new constructions, not even being a conversation that much of an acquisition. But if they decide to buy your business, they will heavily discount it based on that factor. The third part, everybody wants talent, right? So if you have a lot of W-2s, if you have a lot of technicians, if you have a lot of qualified labor hired for your business versus subcontractors, right? A lot of people subcontract out a lot of work that will get discounted, whereas the employees are yours. Everybody knows there's a labor shortage of qualified labor. So oftentimes a strategic buyer will look at acquiring your labor force more than they're just acquiring your business. So if you have a lot of good people that have been with you for a long while, sometimes maybe with work agreements, that's a very, very good sign. Also, if a second layer management person has some equity in the business, that can also be a very positive sign. For example, a lot of SBA loans to acquire a business, require a management person has equity in the business. So, just take that with a grain of salt. That doesn't have to be that way, but it can be very favorable. The other part is the financials, right? Like, are your financials clean? Nothing under the table, off the books? That's super important. Can a buyer kind of come in, take over the customer relationships that you have? Is there a customer concentration? That's going to be also a big question. So first of all, customer relationships, is it tied to you personally or is it tied to the brand? And then the second part is going to be customer concentration. If you have any customer that makes up more than 15 to 20% of your business, that's going to be a huge red flag to any buyer, because they will think if that contract or if that person walks out the door, a fifth of my business out the door as well. Yeah, so these are kind of like the thing that decide how much your plumbing business is worth and what's your valuation for your plumbing businesses. So let's kind of like quickly recap. It's going to be you, the owner dependence. What are you doing? How dependent is the business on you? It's going to be the revenue mix. It's going to be kind of like the team setup in general, right? And then it's going to be the books, the customers, the customer concentration. That's more or less what kind of drives that multiple up or down. The perfect scenario is you have almost almost exclusively recurring revenue. You have a second layer bench of management. You almost spend no time in the business. All the customers are under contract and are tied to the business entity. Nothing that touches you personally. No customer makes up more than, 5 to 10% of the business, and it's all clean and documented so that everybody who comes in the business messages your accountants and sees exactly what's going on, right? So that's the ideal scenario. Now, I have to stress one more point that I see a lot, and that's going to be valuation based on future. A buyer will never value your business on the future, almost never, but it's not about the potential. It's not about, hey, if you buy 3 new trucks, you can serve X amount of customers. That's just not what a buyer thinks. A buyer will always look at the past. A buyer thinks, if I invest and buy this business, how much of the cash flow that is there today will still be there tomorrow. They're not worried about growing your business. That's going to come after, right? But their way of not losing money is going to be the cash flow that is already there, not the cash flow that you might maybe get if you just invest a little bit more in your infrastructure, or if you hire 5 more people, you will do this and this and that. That's just not how a buyer thinks. And this is it's a little bit delusional, because you could do that as well, right? Like, you could take out a loan, you could just implement, right? And then get that revenue. Why are you not doing it? Because it's not that easy, right? These are kind of like the factors that drive what your plumbing business is worth, your plumbing business valuation. I will link a calculator below where you can put in your numbers, you can see where your valuation lands, and there's going to be a calendar below as well. If you want to talk to us, whether that's increasing your valuation over the next few years, or if you say, hey, I've had enough, I think my business is in a good shape, I want to sell it, we can help you do that as well, sometimes even for no cost at all. So I will also link our resource, our article that goes into full length on valuation below, together with the calculator and our calendar. So you'll be 100% equipped to know what your plumbing business is worth. There's also other videos about how to sell your plumbing business, so check those out, and I will see you in the next video.